And there is another major concern with this upcoming election, and that is whether or not people who do vote will have those votes counted. With quite a few states relying on electronic voting machines with no way to verify votes, many voters are concerned that the democratic process could be at risk. The Christian Science Monitor recently published an article titled, "Could e-voting machines in election 2012 be hacked?" Yes. It breaks down how these e-voting machines are not connected to the internet, but hackers can physically manipulate them or target the companies that service them. And since nothing is on paper, the votes could be altered without anyone even knowing. So just how vulnerable is the election process? Brad Friedman is in our Los Angeles studios. He's an investigative journalist and author of BradBlog.com. So Brad, what's the deal here? Most of the makers of these machines say security has been updated and there should be no issues. Do you think voters should be concerned?
Of course they should be concerned. Whatever the makers of the machine said about security being updated is untrue. I would also add that it's not just the touchscreen voting machines that are a concern. Those are used by about a third of the electorate. But every state, all 50 states, use computer optical scan systems, which are equally vulnerable to both hacking and simply failure. They fail all the time. We saw a paper ballot election on an optical scan system down in Palm Beach County, Florida, earlier this year in March, where it named 3 elections incorrectly. It named 2 losers to be the winning candidates of the race. So the problem is nobody bothers to go back and check those paper ballots to make sure the computers got it right. So whether it's the optical scan systems or the touchscreen systems, they are both vulnerable to hackers, most disturbingly from insiders, not from, voters or hackers outside, but insiders. That's the greatest concern. And as well, nobody bothers to, check to make sure any of these computers got it right after the election.
Brad, what are you suggesting when you say insiders? I mean, are you talking about the people that own these machines, that service these machines? Are you talking about poll workers? What's the concern here?
Well, kind of all of the above, but certainly the election officials have access to the central tabulators, which in about 30 seconds can be hacked to flip an entire election. And if you go back to the Baker-Carter Election Reform Commission that was formed after 2004, that was a compromised commission, by the way. Yet even they came out and said that the greatest threat to these systems is from insiders, from election insiders. So these systems are at threat from outside and inside, which is why I've been calling for some time for paper ballots that are hand counted, that can be overseen by the citizenry, so that we don't have to trust whether the electronic systems have gotten it right or not. They may get the numbers right. The problem is we, the people, have no way to know whether they did or not. That's a grave threat to democracy.
And Brad, a lot of people have said, it's 2012. Most of us use ATM machines that spit out a receipt that could then be deposited into an actual ballot box. So you have the electronic voting. But, if there are any questions about the results, it could just be cross-checked against paper results. Why do you think this isn't in place?
Well, to a certain extent, it is. Some of these machines do spit out paper receipts. Now, you don't want to take a receipt with you because that leads to vote buying and selling and intimidation and so forth. But
yeah, I'm just talking, and a lot of people have given that argument. I'm just talking about having, a box there. You do your thing,
sure.
It spits it out, and I've never seen this. I voted in several different states, depending on where I've been living at the time, and I've never seen the receipt. But just something to leave at the polling place.
Well, you can go to BradBlog.com, find out what happened about 2 or 3 years ago to me when I tried to vote on one of these systems. The computer misprinted 4 out of 12 of my own votes. And it took me about 20 minutes to look and make sure, did it really misprint it? Did I get it wrong? Was it my fault? Was it the machine's fault? It turned out it was the machine's fault. But, studies have shown that 80% of the people who use this type of system don't bother to check the paper printout. And a study at Rice University, for example, showed that of those few people who do check the summary at the end of the balloting, some 2/3 of them don't notice when the computer has flipped their vote. So even if you have a computer printout, and even if anybody bothers to go and check it to count it after the election, and nobody ever does, even if they did, we would not know if we're looking at something that actually reflects the voter intent or not. The only way we can know that is if we look at a hand-marked paper ballot. And there's no problem with those. We just continue to imagine that there is and continue to give billions of dollars to private corporations who have privatized our once public elections.
Well, I think there's a lot of different layers that you bring up here. Of course, when we talk about paper ballots, people kind of have a little bit of PTSD from the 2000 election when there was hanging chads and pregnant chads and all kinds of things when these holes were punched. Another interesting piece of this puzzle is that even though the individual election boards may own these e-voting machines, the software inside the machines, is basically proprietary to the manufacturer. That's been confirmed by U.S. courts.
That's right. That's right.
So talk a little bit about transparency here. I mean, this is a democratic process.
Yeah, well, and the heart of any democratic process is transparency, and there is zero transparency in these systems. They're all proprietary systems. You're correct that both the hardware and the software is the proprietary property of these private corporations. Some of them who have dubious ownership, to say the least. We were on talking a few weeks ago about the fact that Mitt Romney's son and his former business partners at Bain and some of his top bundlers, his top donators to his campaign, have now taken over, have now acquired a company by the name of Hart InterCivic, the third largest voting machine company in the country. That should be a concern to anyone. But it's not just the fact that, Romney has ties to a voting machine company. It's that all of the voting machine companies used in all 50 states all have private ownership who are unaccountable to the people and use systems that are 100% untransparent to the citizenry. I can't make that clearer enough.
Brad, here's the deal.
Privatized our elections.
We have a 24-hour cable news cycle in this society that we live in. We're constantly talking about sort of, the election as a sporting event. This is a topic I hear very little about. You say people should be outraged. Why aren't they?
Oh, well, one of the reasons, and you're right, we all cover the horse race on all of the cable channels, but very few people cover the track conditions, which has as much effect on who's going to actually win that horse race. Listen, neither of the major parties want to talk about this. The Republicans don't want to talk about it. The Democrats don't want to talk about it. The Democrats like to pretend that discussing these things depresses turnout. I've seen no actual evidence to support that. As a matter of fact, I've seen evidence quite the contrary, that when people hear about this, they get mad as hell, they want to fight to vote, and they want to make sure that their vote is counted and counted accurately.
Right.
But listen, we know that the mainstream corporate media only covers what the two major political parties essentially tell them to cover.
All right.
And so if they don't talk about it, neither will the corporate media, unfortunately.
Brad Friedman, investigative reporter for BradBlog.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Christine.